Yeah, I had a friend, I texted
Happy
a
to be
friend of
here.
mine telling me I was doing this, and she said, "Don't tell me anything bad. I only want to know the good stuff." So,
Are we starting with the red or the bubbly?
Should go with that.
Leslie,
Red.
I believe we're going to be starting with the red, but just going to do a quick little intro real quick. Thank you all for joining us this evening for Cheers to Love and Heart Health, brought to you by UnCorked, UC Alumni Wine Club, and the College of Medicine Alumni Network. We're very excited to be partnering on this event. As you may have noticed, you've entered this meeting on mute, but you can also unmute yourself at any point in time if you have questions or comments, anything like that. You can also utilize the chat box if you would prefer to do so.
They're going to do a little intro membership.
Just a reminder, this event is being recorded, so it will be made available for viewing afterwards in a post-event email that will be sent towards the middle to end of next week. And before I pass it over to Chris, I have a short little video that I'm going to share with you with a message from Jen Heisey, the Vice President of Alumni and Donor Experience.
Welcome to today's program, one of many offered by your UC Alumni Association. Before we begin, it's important for me to say thank you for joining us. By actively participating in our offerings and experiences, you are harnessing the power of your alumni network. There are Bearcats all over the world, more than 315,000 alumni in 127 countries, which makes virtual programs like this so rewarding. These challenging times do come with a silver lining. We are more connected than ever before, creating boundless opportunities. The University of Cincinnati and each of you is stronger and better positioned because of our lifelong connections through our alma mater. We love providing opportunities like this one, where alumni can learn, network, and give back. So settle in and enjoy today's program. And if you like what you hear today, please share on social media using the hashtag #ThyLoyalChildren. Thanks again for joining us. Go Bearcats.
Chris, I'll go ahead and pass it over to you.
great. Thanks. Welcome, everybody. My name is Chris Peltier. I am the current president of the Alumni Council for the College of Medicine. I graduated, dual degree. I graduated from Arts and Sciences in '91 in the College of Medicine in '95, and I'm a practicing pediatrician here in town. Before I introduce our special guest, just a couple of thank yous. So I'm very excited. I've been wanting to do an UnCorked event for a while. So this is really my first event, and I'm hopefully we'll get to do more with you all. So I'm very excited. I really want to thank Emily for reaching out and suggesting we do a combined event. I want to thank Lauren and Mary Jo for helping this all together. And especially thank you to Leslie at Z Place for providing the wine and the snacks. So it's my pleasure to introduce our special guest. And please, as he's talking, I'm going to monitor the chat box. So if you have some questions for Dr. Rubenstein, please enter them in the chat box, and he's going to do a short couple of minutes of question and answer. He may be able to stick around for a little bit, but we want to make sure that if you have any questions about wine and your heart, that we get those answered for you. Dr. Rubenstein was born in Mexico City, where he completed his medical training. He then trained in internal medicine at Albert Einstein Medical Center in Philadelphia and in cardiovascular diseases at Michigan State University. He's been at the University of Cincinnati for over a decade and is currently an associate professor of medicine and director of the Physician Scientist Training Program. And for those of you that don't know that is a program, it's at least 7 years. It can take as long as 10 years, depending on their training. And not only do normally medical schools 4 years and you graduate with a medical degree, these are exceptionally bright people that not only leave UC with a medical degree, but they also have a PhD. So these are people that are doing cutting edge research and are really just the brightest of the bright at the College of Medicine. Dr. Rubenstein has an active translational cardiovascular laboratory that has been funded by the NIH, the American Heart Association, and most recently, the Veterans Administration. He lives in the burbs with his wife and 3 children. He enjoys playing polo, and he's written a medical novel titled The Perfect Dose, which I didn't know. So I'm gonna have to go on Amazon when we're done and have to look at that. So Jack, the floor is yours, and thanks for taking some time to share with us.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Can everybody hear me okay? Wonderful. Wonderful. I got the nods. Wonderful. Excellent. Thank you for the introduction. Before I even get started, I got to tell you that I love Cincinnati. I'm a guest here for about 10 years. I gather that I need to spend a couple of generations here before I can be considered a local. But Cincinnati's been a great home for me. The University of Cincinnati's been wonderful for me. So I appreciate always the opportunity to give back a little bit to the community and to give back to the alumni. So thank you so much for hosting me. So let's talk a little bit about heart health and wine and alcohol. And I would be told to focus on the good stuff. So let's start with the good stuff, right? Where does this whole story start? I'm sure we've all heard that wine is good for your heart, and I use the excuse of this presentation to really do a little bit of a deep dive and figure out where the story comes from and how it got going. So it all started in France with the French paradox. So you guys may or may not have heard of the French paradox. It was initially presented as an interesting finding, right? This is back in the 80s, where French people would eat lots of cheese and lots of meats and all this stuff that back in the 80s we thought was really bad for you, right? And they turned out to live longer and have less heart attacks. And why is this the case, right? So unsurprisingly, an international organization that promotes wine were probably one of the first ones to put it out there and say, hey, drink wine, it's good for you because look, French drink a ton of wine and they're dying less of heart attacks. And it's an interesting association. And over the last 40 years, we've had ups and downs in what we know about drinking and heart disease. So sort of like what we've been living through for the last year or so, right? With COVID, we've all been like following very closely the guidelines, and the closer you follow the guidelines or what the experts are saying, the more you notice that they say do this, then they say do that, and then they say go this, and then they say go that way, right? And it's been frustrating for all of us. And when people call me and say, hey Jack, I thought we were supposed to do this, I thought this medicine worked, I thought that worked, and I would say no and yes, and they're like, see, this whole thing is a mess. And I tell them, no, this is how things work, this is how science works, right? We have an observation, we test the observation, we try to test it as best as we can under the best conditions, and then if the observation turns out true, then that's great, and if it doesn't, then we try again and again. And sometimes it turns out that it worked out exactly like we wanted it to work out, but then a few other researchers show that it doesn't work out that way, and then you've got to go back to the drawing board. So the phrase that I use very frequently is, and it's not mine, of course, it's way too nice of a phrase, is that beautiful hypotheses are frequently destroyed by ugly facts, right? And that happened in the last year. We've seen it happen, and a very stretched out version of this has been happening over the last 40 years. So let's start with the good news. The good news is that if you currently drink and you drink in moderation, defined generally as less than 1 or less drinks a day for women and 2 or less drinks a day for guys, you're probably okay. So that's the good news, right? So no need to stop if that's your general consumption. So whoever already has their drink out, I do not have mine because I'm at work, but if you have your drink out, go ahead. Cheers to you all if you are one of those people that drink 1 or maybe up to 2 a day. So congratulations there. So that's the good news. Now that you've drank a little and you're a little happier, here comes a little bit of the bad news, right? So if you drink more than that, probably not great. There's some pretty reasonable evidence that more than that is probably not going to help your heart much, and it's probably going to hurt your chances of not having hypertension and stuff like atrial fibrillation and whatnot. So that's not the great news. Of course, the other not great news, if you have a drinking problem, then yeah, clearly should not be drinking more, right? And all the guidelines are going to tell you that. So definitely don't go down that pathway. And the third bad news, don't worry, I'll wrap it up with some good news. The third bad news, that if you have certain types of heart disease, like for example, atrial fibrillation or alcoholic cardiomyopathy, those kind of scenarios, really you should not be drinking any, even that one drink a day. Okay, so that's the bad news. Well, how's the good news to all of this? Is that everything in moderation seems to be okay. And sorry for our sponsors from the wine club, any kind of alcohol seems to do about the same. So a glass of wine is about the same as a shot of bourbon, a shot of tequila, or a tumbler of bourbon, if that's your thing, if you like the Kentucky. Is anybody out there from Kentucky right now? No, no Kentuckians? Boo. All right. Anyway, if you are from Kentucky, a little bourbon is also quite all right. So that's the good, the long, and the short of it. I'm happy to take questions, or I'm happy to really talk some more about any of these kind of heart disease issues. So I'm all ears. I see the chat popped up. I don't know, Chris, if there's any questions specifically for me.
No, there was just somebody just said not related to heart health, but someone had asked, and I'm assuming there might be a relation here, if anybody had had Joel Schindler as a professor for hematology at the College of Medicine in the early 80s, and I said that was before my time. Gail, is that a relation, I'm assuming? You guys can unmute. Small group. Go ahead, unmute, talk. You're good.
Yeah, he's right here. My
Oh,
husband.
excellent. Very good. Hope you're enjoying retirement.
Not retired.
Wow, retired, still working. Wow. Excellent. Does anybody have any questions for Jack?
Yeah, Chris, I was going to start in with one for Dr. Rubenstein. Thank you very much for being part of the program tonight. Can you just talk a little bit more about the science behind, why alcohol in moderation is heart healthy? Like, can you get into a little bit of the specifics for what it does to your body and how that translates to like better heart health?
Right. So the short answer is we're not really sure. I mean, we can talk a lot about potential ideas, right? So people talk about, I can never pronounce it right. This is where my Latin background comes in. Resveratrol. Let's go with resveratrol. I'm not 100% sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. But anyway, it's one of those things that is found very, very often in red wine. And people think that it can potentially have, it could potentially lower or be associated with lower cholesterol levels. So that could be one of the reasons. The other reason is polyphenols, which are associated with decreased atherosclerosis. So that's also a potential reason. Another reason that's sort of been studied, but sort of hasn't been studied, is that it relaxes you, right? It chills you out. So we're very, very familiar with stress, right? Particularly nowadays, this whole year has been just insane. So stress is definitely bad for the heart, and it's pretty well established. I mean, you don't need to be a scientist to know that it chills you out. It relaxes you. It increases your parasympathetic tone. In moderation, it could potentially also lower your blood pressure, right? And more than moderation, it's going to probably increase your blood pressure. So all of these are reasons why it could potentially work. Now, the difficulty and why I hedge is because doing dietary studies is insanely difficult, right? I mean, the way we're used to doing experiments is you grab a bunch of people and you give them a medicine, or you don't give them medicine, you see how they turn out, right? But how are you going to do this in the real world? I mean, how are you going to control for foods? How are you going to control for stress? How are you going to make sure that they drink 2 glasses of wine every single day and follow them for 20, 30, 40 years? That makes it very difficult. So we've had to do other kinds of studies to try to tease out how it works and if it works. So the ideas are the one, to answer your question in a short way, it's probably related to atherosclerosis, to decreasing your cholesterol, to decreasing your blood pressure. But there's so many confounding variables that it's really difficult to say with certainty which one it is.
Guys, if you have a question, feel free to unmute. And we're a small group.
Okay, Leslie actually has a question for Dr. Rubenstein.
Yes, ma'am. Jack is fine, by the way. I can't hear you.
Huh? Can you hear?
I couldn't hear you guys.
We can hear you, Emily, but we couldn't hear Leslie.
Oh, where's your microphone?
Maybe I'm not as loud as Emily.
That's probably true.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess I was 26. I was diagnosed with an idiopathic ventricular tachycardia.
Okay.
Dr. Grubb up in Toledo at MCO attempted to do a EPS study, which was, they couldn't do it because it was pretty new then. I was 36 when they did another EPS study and they fixed it. So I haven't had really any issues since then, but do you recommend having some kind of cardiology workup, and does that come back?
Right. So idiopathic or ventricular tachycardias that you ablate are pretty scary kind of stuff, right? Those are the arrhythmias that we really don't like to see. So I don't want to scare you or anything, but the first answer, should you get followed up? Yes, definitely yes. Those are some of the key words that I saw Chris as well. We both sort of like took a little bit of a step back. Those are the words we don't like here.
I worked in the cardiology clinic at the time at MCO, and
right. So I'm sure you got a feel.
They were like panicking, hitting the panic button, and they're like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Wait a minute." I'm like, "This happens all the time," and my heart always compensated for it. So I was like,
right. Those are the kind of things that keep us up at night, right? Those are the kind of things that keep us doctors up at night. So yes, to definitely follow up, and you're really not going to like me for this, but alcohol increases the chance of developing arrhythmias, these bad rhythms, in people that are prone to them. So please handle with care the alcohol.
maybe I'll be calling you to make an appointment.
I'm more than happy to see you and to refer you to my EP college. We got some really, really great, smart people here. So I'm more than happy to refer you to them. They're really,
that sounds good.
Incredibly smart people here that I work with. So happy to do so.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I have a question, Doctor.
Sure.
Okay, so we all, kind of fall, I would say fall potentially into, the analytical challenge of averages. And your introduction.
I like this question.
So your introduction, basically said that if on average a female drinks one portion of alcohol a day and a male 2, then, we're essentially okay. So if you look over time, let's say over the course of a week, a male can drink, say, 12 to 14, on that averages 2 a day and be fine. But what happens if you drink 4 every other day, or 6 twice a week? And again, I'm using week as the metric. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way, but to what extent does the kind of binge versus bust consumption have an impact on cardiovascular health?
Right. So usually when I tell this, that question usually comes up slightly less scientifically based, but it comes up from my younger patients going, so does that mean I can drink 14 drinks on Saturday night? That's usually the version of that, which is it's basically what you're asking. The short answer is no. I mean, it's pretty clear. 1 or 2, 1 for guys, 2 for guys, 1 for ladies per day. More than that, you're getting yourself into trouble. Like your law of averages that you're describing, the curve, however you want to describe it statistically, more than 1 or 2 per day gets you into trouble. So you're not really averaging, you're just saying local consumption by day. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So because, I mean, we use week because it's an easy way of doing it. I prefer day because it's much more precise, right? Because under that idea, you're like, oh, I'm going to drink 30 drinks once a month, right? So no, it's
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Great. I think we have time.
Somebody raises.
I think we have time for one more question. If somebody has a question, sorry, Jack.
I see a raised hand, and I think it's from the same people that asked me. Hi, Bob and Phil has asked me privately the difference between red and whites. As far as cardiovascular outcomes, I'm not aware that there's been a lot of differences. It all started with the red wines, partially because I think it was pushed by the red wine makers out in France. I'm not aware of any difference from a heart perspective, but we have the experts on the wine side of things, right? So they can tell us all about the difference between red and whites, right?
So before I turn over to Leslie to do that, one more question, since this is related, since Leslie was kind enough to give us some chocolate in our gift packs.
I don't have chocolate.
On chocolate and heart health?
Right. So I love these questions. The short answer is we just don't know enough. There's been back and forth and back and forth. If you look back at the food pyramid from like the 80s and 90s that I think most of us are familiar with, and you start digging into the evidence behind them, people are like this. There really wasn't a whole lot of evidence behind that. And if you're inclined, you can just Google chocolate and heart disease, and either way you want to go, you'll find some data pointing you in that direction. Which is sort of unfortunate. The short answer that I give most people is that the vast majority of things that we consume on a day-to-day basis, as long as we consume them in reasonable amounts, there's not going to be strong evidence one way or the other. So that goes for chocolate, which I'm a huge fan. It goes for coffee, which I'm a huge fan. It goes for wine, which I'm a reasonable fan. I'm more of a fan of bourbon. Sorry, Z Place guys. But yeah, the short answer is it's very difficult to know one way or the other. Moderation is definitely key, though.
Well, Jack, Mary Jo and I are big bourbon fans, so we will have to do a College of Medicine bourbon thing, and we will make sure to invite you. So
I am on like Donkey Kong for that. I would love that.
Well, Chris, then I have to be invited to that, even though I'm not College of Medicine.
Very good.
Favorite bourbon? Oh my Lord, whichever is probably closest to me at that time. Though I would go old school with actually the oh shoot, I'm blanking on the name right now. I mean, I'm blanking on the name. Let me Google it really quickly and I'll answer on the chat what my favorite bourbon is. I'm blanking on the name right now on the spot.
So I love New Riff, which is it's a local that's in across the river.
That's right around in Covington, right?
Mary Jo Philhauer turned me on to Traverse City bourbon, which is up in Michigan. So
I'm gonna Google the name of this one. It's the best bourbon you'll have for $15. I've given it to people $15 and under. It's one of the best bourbons, and I'm blank. Oh, Heaven Hill 7 year.
All right.
There you go.
Heaven Hill 7 year. Okay.
Heaven Hill 7 year. It's like less than $20 and it tastes like a $50 bourbon. It's wonderful.
Four Roses for me is in that same kind of category.
Yeah.
Right. For $20.
Right. You can make a really strong case for that one. Even the single barrel Four Roses. Anyway, we're cutting off topic, and I think I overstayed a little bit or overwent a little bit my time.
Jack, thank you so much. We really appreciate that, and thanks for sort of that lighthearted look at wine and heart health.
Thank you all for appreciate that.
Emily and Leslie now.
Well, thank you again also everybody for joining us here. I am here at Z Place with Leslie, the sole proprietor of this lovely establishment who's become a very dear friend. We like to drink wine, so I'm going to take it in moderation. So we put together this little package to have a little chat about heart health. Thought it was a perfect combination when I talked to Chris about this to do a slightly smaller version of our normal wine tastings, but bring in the heart health component as well, just since it's February. But so we picked 2 wines for you, and we'll start. I'll let Leslie go. We've already started with the True Colors, and I'll let her chat with you.
So both wines actually are from Spain. So I don't know if anybody knows when they pick up the bottles.
But Leslie, can you to that mic?
Yeah.
Cool.
You're louder. I think the mic is here.
So both of the wines are from Spain. This is a sparkling. It's a cava. It's called True Colors. I love it because it is a great price point. It's $17.99. You're gonna have that citrus, that pear, that apple. The color is beautiful when you pour it in the glass. For a sparkling, it's a fabulous price point. The bottle is beautiful. So if you're going to a party, I mean, this is a great gift. I've taken it to some Indian Hill parties and they all love it. And it's an inexpensive sparkling. You don't have to, nowadays, you don't have to spend $100 to get a great sparkling. You can spend well under, $50 to $20 and get a great sparkling. And this one's fabulous because it comes in such a great bottle.
And if I'm not mistaken, the bottle was created during Pride Week a couple years ago.
It was made during Pride Week. So that's another great bonus for this one. I do like to support
a lot of different projects. So this one I do like to support as well. So enjoy. I'm happy to hear what everybody thinks about this one before we go on to the next one.
Feel free to unmute yourself if you.
It's very good.
I don't know if anybody is really familiar with a lot of different sparklings, but this one I think compares very well with some of the $50 sparklings.
Agreed. Really good. Yeah.
I like it pretty well even. We just had a few several months ago.
Would you consider this a dessert, or what would you pair it with if you were going to have it to eat? What?
You can, this one you can pair with just about anything. I mean, you can pair it with cured meat, you can pair it with shellfish, you can pair it with some cheeses, salty things. You can pair it with a lot of different things.
Like their lighter white fish, I wouldn't necessarily go with, again, but I'm not a sea bass fan. I would consider with like a, you know, a tilapia or a halibut or something like that this would go with as far as like a fish dish. But like Leslie said, this pairs perfectly with, like, you could do just a basic charcuterie board with some great cured meats, cheeses, fruit. I mean, it really goes with just about anything.
Mm-hmm. And if you look, a lot of times now when I do tastings with a lot of my vendors, I kind of tip my glass a little bit and look at the color. And this one has just got such a great color. And when I look at this in comparison to, and you guys aren't going to have that kind of refined, and some of you may, a lot of the wine people that I know that do tastings now sometimes are better at this than I am. And some of you may notice this, but when you look at this up to the light, it's just got such a dark, rich color, which I think gives it that flavor.
And you do have some salami and Gouda with you, so you should, you're trying it with that and give it a little taste and see what you think.
Mm-hmm.
One of us doesn't.
Well, and sparkling is not, sparkling is kind of an acquired taste. Not everybody, it's like whites and your reds. Not everybody likes reds and not everybody likes whites. So sparkling is very similar.
So which one are you, Phyllis?
He's definitely about sparkling wines. This one, Rosetta doesn't exactly work for him. And that's okay. So.
It's okay.
I always like usually like a sparkling more as like my pre-dinner, like if there's going to be a cocktail hour beforehand. Like I don't think I've ever really had it like with a meal. Like usually by that point I'm usually switching to a red, but I do enjoy it sort of pre-event.
Well, and I think most people have always thought of sparkling as more of a celebratory type of drink. It's not something you're going to, most people don't use it as something that you're going to drink all night. I do have people that come in here and drink a lot of Prosecco, which is a sparkling, and they'll drink a lot, you know, bottle after bottle when they come in here. But, you know, that's their jam. They like the sparkling Prosecco, and, you know, it's just like the whites. You know, some people like the whites, and I get a few people that come in here and just love Prosecco.
Which is why there's a cool wine cooler case
I do
over here in the corner where stuff is always ready, chilled, and waiting for someone to walk in.
Yes, right now it's filled with sparkling because that's kind of the time of the year when it's Valentine's Day and we just, you know, past New Year. So I keep it mostly filled with sparklings.
So does it ruin the flavor of the champagne if you throw like a couple raspberries in there, or maybe a strawberry or something just for look, or no, that's okay?
No, it actually enhances the flavor. We've done it here a few times. It tastes, it just kind of gives it gives it a little extra color, and it makes it look pretty in the glass, and then it does enhance the flavor just a little bit.
Okay.
But it also makes it look really pretty.
That's what I like. I'm glad to know that it doesn't ruin the flavor.
No, it does not. It does not ruin the flavor.
In the hot summer months, I know I have friends that like freeze grapes or different little fruits, pop them in the flute, on a hot day, and just, sit outside. Kind of gives it, keeps it cold a little bit longer and gives it a little bit of different flavor. I mean, you can do that this time of year, but I know the frozen fruit is popping a couple of pieces of that in there in the summertime is always wonderful.
That is a great idea. I have friends that do the same thing. Of course, I also have friends that come in here and put ice in their wine and their sparkling. But this is a no judgment zone, so I kind of let people do what they want.
If things go well, we are going to be traveling in Spain in September. What region of Spain does the sparkling?
That's a good question. It probably says it on the bottle.
We all have to put
our glasses
because we can't see.
Rocks, Spain. Produced by Venatura.
Where in Spain is this one from?
Spain.
Here, let me see. They can't hear you.
No, Subarata, Spain. Down there under bottled wine.
Where? There. Oh.
You're going to want to
Subriats. It looks like it's spelled Subiirats. I like Subirats, but I'm sure it's pronounced a little bit different.
Where in Spain are you going to be?
You make your trip.
We're going to be in Barcelona, and then we're going to travel a little bit down to Madrid. We're going to maybe, depending on how things are, go to Gibraltar, and then end up in Lisbon. But of course, all of this is if come May, but that was the plan.
Of course.
So to answer your question, this is actually inside the province of Barcelona. I will, in case nobody heard me, I will type it.
You'll drink a lot of sherry in Spain.
Oh, you should drink some Tempranillo.
Rioja is fabulous.
That's what I would drink in Spain if I had a choice.
I have a lot of Rioja here, and it does very well on the top. I have a hard time keeping it on the shelf.
That's a red wine?
Yes. It's delicious. I do have some whites that are from Spain as well. Should we find it? Okay. All right. So the next wine.
Well, together, whoever put together the different wine. And
so your next.
What's that, Phyllis?
They're really, really very well put together. All of it. Especially the.
Thank you.
Emily and I collaborated very well together.
You don't like anything, blame her. Just kidding. It would be both of our faults. It'd be both of our faults. We did it together.
So it's funny because she picked
the second wine she picked because it had a cat on it. I picked it because it was delicious. Because I've had it before, and it's 2 years in a row. It's gotten 90 and 91 points from James Suckling. So it's a very highly rated wine. You're gonna taste a lot of cherry, a lot of ripe fruits. It's very well balanced, very full-bodied wine. And it's from, this one is going to be from Jamalia. And of course, you know, the cat on the front, you can't not have a cat when you're gonna do bear cats. That's why we picked it. It's not exactly a bear cat.
It's not exactly a bear cat, but I saw the cat. She's like, oh, that's really good. And I said, but that's cool because it's got a cat on it.
But it is a delicious wine, and I do sell a lot of it in the shop because it is delicious. And it, you know, it does get that 90 points. So you can decant this wine, and it does, after it opens up, it does taste better after you decant it. A lot of people, you know, wine connoisseurs are a little bit more educated on decanting wines. But if you decant the wine and let it sit for an hour, it does open up that wine a little bit more. And if you want to experiment with it, decant the wine for a half an hour, taste it, decant the wine, you know, let it sit for another half hour, try it again, you know, and let it sit for like, you know, another half an hour and try it again. It's amazing how different the wine will taste after those different periods of time after you've decanted the wine. It does have a different flavor after a while.
Well, what do you think? What part of the flavor comes out more, do you think, as it sits?
Say that in some cases, especially when you're decanting wine, at least from my personal experience, and with any wine in general, it's not even just about decanting it. Everybody's taste buds are it's gonna hit them a little bit different. I'm getting more probably like cherry out of mine, but someone else might get a different fruit that's coming forward to them. It's not necessarily like a hitter, like it's this or this. It's your palate too. But is anybody tasting anything like in particular that they're getting from it? Because I'm getting like a cherry vibe.
No, I got, but I got distracted. Lauren, does that thing light up? What is that you were doing?
Oh yeah, it's an electric wine bottle opener.
Wow.
Fancy.
Laura knows how to do it at our shop. So the electric ones are the best.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. My mom got it for me for Christmas last year. It's probably my favorite Christmas present last year.
Real game changer.
Well, and I put in the chat box, I sent a picture to Emily and she's like, why did you not get me one? So the bookstore sells UC wine stoppers. So I've got mine in there for later. So there's a link if you would like to purchase UC wine stoppers.
From the bookstore.
Yep, from the bookstore.
Because you can only have 2 glasses of wine a day, so you need the wine stopper.
Unless there's more than one of you drinking out of the same bottle.
Especially if you have an idiopathic reticular tachycardia.
That literally, I think, just gave Chris heart palpitations.
It's all right. I'm not a cardiologist, so. None of my patients drink wine, so it's all right.
Well, God, I hope not, because they're a little young.
You sure, Chris?
Well, no. So my best story. We do have some of our kids with developmental needs, and we will keep a little bit older, and I have he's now since graduated from our practice, but he had autism, but was very high functioning, and he turned 21. He came in to see me, and he was so cute. He's like, Dr. Peltier. It's like, I got to tell you, I had my first beer, which I, very rarely do I ever hear that, and legally. And I'm like, how was it? He goes, so yeah, every now and then, but most of the time, luckily, none of my patients don't drink
This is what the price point is on this one. Can you just see what it's back that way? Cat, go behind, no, right there on the edge. That one.
That was probably refreshing, right? Your kid said first drink at 21.
Yep.
And also, everybody, just so you know, this particular wine, $15.99 in the shop. So
let's talk a little bit about and sorry if I missed this when I had to step away for just a minute, but did you talk about the meat and cheese pairings that you paired up with this? I don't know if that was just something that you thought would be nice and easy, or
Well, I did it for
story behind why like you thought those would go really well with these wines.
Well, I did it for two reasons. One, they go well with pretty much everything. Two, it was easy to pair because it was easier to put everything together. It's hard to do baskets and put them together and then have people pick them up and not have them go bad.
Right. So we had to go with something that could handle not being refrigerated. So the Gouda is not refrigerated, obviously. So then there was no issue with having the bags ready for everybody to come pick up.
Now, I do have sausages that I love that are a little bit spicier, but I didn't want to go with anything too spicy for everybody. I have some cheeses that are a little bit harder, a little, have a little bit more texture. They're a little sharper, that probably would have paired better with some of the wines tonight, but I wanted to get something that would be a little bit easier to put in the baskets. And these cheeses they go well. They're across the board. They just go well with everything. And of course the chocolate too.
Oh, I've been teaching a class for Ollie about the neighborhoods of Cincinnati, and I just came across some information about the last Catawba vineyard in Cincinnati. And it was in Hartwell, right where it goes into Wyoming. And these people made sparkling Catawba wine, which kind of comes across like a sparkling, I don't know, sweet wine.
I would think that the Catawba wines are usually pretty sweet. Yeah, one thing that I found that was really interesting when I started tasting wines with the vendors here, because I didn't know a lot about the wines. I would swirl the wines and smell the wines, and I know we talked about decanting the wines. Sometimes it takes me 2 or 3 sips before I decide whether or not I really like the wine. And I think part of that is because it opens up in the glass a little bit more. And it's almost like telling your kids, you got to try something 2 or 3 times before you really like something. So it's almost that same kind of concept of with the wine, you got to swirl it around, smell it, and let it kind of open up a little bit in that glass and taste it 2 or 3 times before you really decide whether or not you like it.
Sometimes I think that first taste is all the alcohol, and I have to get past that to get to the real flavor.
Right. That's exactly right.
Anyone have any other questions about the wines?
Yeah.
How long is a good amount of time to uncork the bottle of wine and let it breathe?
So I would uncork it maybe about a half an hour to an hour before you're getting ready to eat.
Okay.
And let it really breathe.
See, that's perfect. That's why you have your sparkling as your pre-dinner
Yeah.
glass, Chris.
Once you open a bottle, especially red, and then you how long is it good for after you open it?
It depends on whether or not you've got a good cork. Usually it's only going to be good for a couple of days. You're going to start tasting that. Sometimes you're going to taste that vinegary taste like even the next day. I finally bought a Corvin, which is what a lot of my vendors use. And you stick the needle. I don't know if anybody's familiar with what a Corvin is. I don't have it in the shop with me, but you stick a needle in, it uses CO2 to pour the wine out, and it basically seals back up that cork. And if you use a Corvin, you can keep that bottle for several weeks, sometimes even longer, before that bottle goes bad. They're super expensive, but it'll keep your bottles forever, 3 or 4 weeks if you're not going to drink it right away. And if you've got expensive bottles that you're opening, it's well worth it. Then that's a whole different ballgame. I can't help you if it's
I'm just challenging her right here on the fly.
Leslie, it looks like we have a question in the chat. Sandy wants to know, if you don't have time to open prior and let the wine breathe, do you recommend an aerator?
An aerator can work just as well, or a decanter is great too. And I have heard, so one of my vendors has told me that if you don't have time and you have if you have 1 or 2 decanters or just 1 decanter, pouring your wine in the decanter and swirling it around will also help aerate the wine more.
Well, that makes me so happy because I have that decanter from when I got married. Now I can use it.
Now it has a purpose, Mary Jo.
Of course, if you're a real cheapskate, I have read about just buy good box wine and put it in the blender.
Oh. So it was funny, I did a post on Facebook because they have gotten better with canned wines and box wines. And I did a post about some box wines and some canned wines, and I only had a couple of box wines left, and sure enough, somebody came in like the very next day and bought for like I'm out now. But I think, in the summer these box wines hold like a couple of bottles in them. And this box wine actually was pretty good. It was $15.
Lauren or Russell, what was the canned wine one that we did at Zola a couple years ago?
That was before I started.
Russell's, he should still be on there. He would know. I can't think of what it's called. They were UC grads that does the 3 different wines in the can at Zula when we did the tasting at Zula.
I don't like drinking wine in the can.
No, it's kind of off-putting, but.
Well, we didn't drink it out of the can. We poured it into a glass, but I think the nice thing about it was the convenience of carrying it. Yeah. And for some of these people that I know, like Bob and Phyllis and Chris, for tailgating purposes.
Tailgating,
Just,
people that
yes,
like
Phyllis,
to
I'm talking to you.
Tailgating, I knew a lot of people up here in Montgomery were coming in and buying it because they wanted to take it to the pool. Mm-hmm. So they would come in, it was hilarious last summer. They would come in with their little kids trailing behind in their little swimsuits, and they were like probably 5. And they'd come in with these little kids, and then they were coming in to buy their wine to go to the pool. So I was thinking, this is genius. Why didn't they come up with that like years ago?
It's not in a glass because
yeah.
No, and they're not. No, You can't.
Sure.
Especially
So
when there's kids.
at the Peach Bowl, I went down. I was staying at the team hotel, and they didn't have a bottle opener, or they didn't have a bottle opener. They didn't have a corkscrew either. So I was like, I now have a TSA approved corkscrew that I can travel with, and so.
Wine
I've been traveling with one of those.
Austin Allison and his wife Angela.
Yes, thank you. What was the wine called though?
Wine Society.
Wine Society, that's it.
Yep.
Couldn't remember.
Don't you think if you put a straw in the can, it kind of acts like an aerator?
It's kind of like the opposite of an aerator, I think. But
Passes it up. Sometimes I take a bottle of Frank family home and I put a straw in it.
What I'm hearing you say is these canned wines are good for tailgating.
What'd she
say? Say it
I
again,
said-
Phyllis.
So what I'm hearing you say, these canned wines are good for tailgating.
You can't have glass bottles.
See?
Yes.
Perfect for tailgating. Just saying.
They will serve a purpose.
Phyllis is making a note of this. Phyllis, it's on your way down to UC, so you can just stop by here in the summer and before football season. And
I think
load up.
I had some that came in black cans, which is perfect for UC. I'll even put a red bow on it for you.
Noted.
Well, I think, like I said, the thing with the canned wines, and this is, the wine was what we did that tasting down at Zula 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago.
Two years ago, and they were really good. And I think if you look at their wines, like you'll notice, like they only have one red and it's a blend, and then they have other whites. So they're not. They're good wines. Don't get me wrong, but they're not very complex wines that you would have to that you would want to breathe or to aerate, like whatever that is. Like they're just pretty straightforward. They're simple, tasty. It works in a can. You could drink it with a straw because it's good.
You could, and if I remember correctly, you could get 2 to 2.5 pours out of each can.
Do we really want our wines great for tailgating?
Yeah, they were like 16 ounces.
Yeah.
16 ounces.
16 ounces.
Wow.
Right?
Pounders, yeah.
Hey, that's a lot easier to carry around tailgating than, a bottle. Well, like for when we go down to catwalk and stuff.
Or a bag, right? We've got to keep this classy. You don't want to have wandering around.
You guys bottles of wine to take to tailgating.
You can do that too.
I'm happy to hook you up.
I like to put
We now have those bags that when you come in here, you'll get 10% off. You just have to tell everybody, you have to tell the cashier that you're from UnCorked, and you get 10% off now.
You have to bring the bag back with you.
All right. Noted.
You get more than everybody else, because everybody else that's getting the bag only gets 5% off.
She's doing something special just for us.
The advantage of the canned wines is you can go get one of those hats that are made for beer cans.
Bob,
you would think about that.
I love that.
You can put the wine in and just have the tube where you siphon it out.
Put a red one on one side and a white one in the other side.
Perfect.
Depending on which mood you are for the next 5 minutes.
Exactly. Russell, who do we need to talk to get a Mick and Mac vintage here? How do we go about this?
That's a good question.
I'm gonna follow up this beer wine hat. Yeah.
The thing is, Chris,
I'm expecting to see that by the first football game of next season.
I will donate the red and white.
There you go.
And the nice thing about those hats is they have straws, so they'll be aerated well.
That's right.
I love how we all think.
They also have those too. So it's gonna be a really hard decision.
You just
gonna drink.
Just don't try to tie your shoes while you're wearing the beer hat. You know. It's...
Bob, I want some passes to walk in catwalk. If you can get that, I may take you with me. Just saying.
Hey, I thought you were taking me. What?
You are still coming. I still, and then I have one.
She said she was taking me too.
So Leslie can come. Leslie, Chris, and Bob, but Bob has to have his hat.
I'll be there with my wine hat.
Prerequisite.
Bearcat wine hat.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a prerequisite, and if you don't have it, you can't come.
Mary Jo, I think I know what we're stocking the alumni tent with later next year. So.
Oh, definitely. I think
we'll be
to keep it diverse and have the beer and the wine and.
I know, although Katie does like that seltzer stuff, but.
Right.
Katie and I do like the
store too.
I shared my seltzer with you at the last football.
You did.
So,
that was a fun day.
That was a great day.
We can do a seltzer tasting
if I could.
Oh, one of the other fun things that she has here is bellinis. You can mix with your prosecco.
Oh.
What?
I know, but you can add a little more. I do.
Mix what? Bellini. Ooh.
I cornered the market on bellinis. I couldn't get them in anymore from Romania from my vendor. So when I couldn't get them, my vendor finally got them in for me. So I bought them all. So now they come in blood orange, they come in mango and peach. They're delicious. And the way I decided to buy them all was I had a 21-year-old that works here, and I had her taste them, and she's like, I love them. And she said that all the 21-year-olds at UC would love them too, because that's where she goes. So I figured if the 21-year-olds love them, it's a home run. So I bought them out. So now nobody in Cincinnati has them, and nobody in Kentucky has them either.
What time do you open tomorrow? I'm coming for the blood orange.
11 a.m.
You will love it. I think all three of them are great, but I will say the blood orange is by far my favorite.
We sold a ton of them over Christmas, and I was doing mimosas and bellinis in the morning, and I'm going to start doing that again. It's just right now the weather is just not conducive for that right now.
So there's usually usually Friday night and Saturday there's tasting going on.
Mm-hmm.
Follow Z Plays for Wine on Facebook, Instagram. You can find out about the different events. Every once in a while there's live music, and actually for some of you Bearcat fans who know, a couple weeks ago Jim Kelly played here on a Friday night. It was truly amazing.
Nice.
Be here about once a month.
Yeah.
So in the winter, do you sell blue wine, spice wine?
I do not have any spiced wine. I was going to make my own spiced wine with some of the extra wine that I had here, but I got too busy and then that never panned out.
Leslie, can I ask real quick, what do you add to a wine to make it a spiced wine?
So I have done a recipe at my house, and if I'm remembering correctly, I added red wine, cinnamon, and I did it all like, you know, the real stuff. So it was like the cinnamon sticks, orange slices, nutmeg. I like ground the nutmeg and put it in there. I think that was it. There may be one or two ingredients that I may be missing, but you have to be really careful about not cooking it for too long, because then you're going to cook off the alcohol.
Maybe a little cloves.
That's it. That's what I was missing. I knew there was something else I was missing. And when I make it, I always use all like the real stuff.
I was gonna ask, that kind of sounds like a wassail recipe almost,
Yeah,
but just cooked
Everybody has like a couple of different, like I had a vendor come in and say, do you want to buy this? And I'm like, why would I buy that? I'm like, I can make that. And he's like, well, I guess that's an approach. He's like, I guess that's an approach you can take. But yeah, I mean, if there's leftover wine here, I think next year that's probably going to be something that I may tackle. We were just so crazy in here, and I was so new to like taking over the shop that I didn't have, you know, I didn't have it all together. Ask Emily. I was kind of a lunatic.
Which is only, yeah.
Also has teenage daughters.
I have 2 teenage daughters. They're 16 and 18. They turn into The Exorcist about every 3 or 4 days.
You know. Yeah, we have.
That interests me because I love sangria. I like warm sangria. I like that.
Yeah.
Same here, Chris.
In the past, we have made something called Bishop's Cup.
Smoking Bishop.
Smoking Bishop. And actually, Dickens has a recipe for it. And you can also get it at the Golden Lamb, but it's got grapefruit in it, and it's served warm, and it's red burgundy wine. Oh, it's delicious in the winter, but you can't drink too much.
Smoking Bishop. I just
one to 2 drinks a day.
Yes, doctor.
As long as they're this size, I'm okay. It's the Ina Garten size.
Bob, you kill me.
They used in the olden days, they would talk about having a bowl of punch, and there was wine and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's like the wassail bowl that Katie was talking about, right? So.
Well, and I'm sure as, you know, when summer hits, I'll probably start to get creative with maybe some different things that I'll probably do in the shop. So, you know, maybe there's something cool that I can make with the white wines or the rosés or even with the red wines too.
Well, speaking of the sangria, just before, do you make sangrias at all?
I haven't yet, but I bought the shop in July with 2 other partners and then really kind of started taking over by myself in October and then signed the paperwork and made it official just a couple weeks ago. So
she owns it all by herself now.
Yeah. So there's lots of changes. It's like every week my vendors come in and they're like, oh, you've done something different to the shop. And some of it's, they're all like, a lot of it's just like little tiny tweaks that, you know, not anything super expensive, you know, just like moving furniture and decluttering and, you know, kind of fun stuff like that. Doing things with the website. I've been marketing a lot more than that was done before. So it's a lot of things like that. So, and I do plan on getting into making things like the sangrias and making mulled wines in the wintertime and, you know, doing fun things like that.
Yeah, I have a pretty tasty sangria recipe that came from, of all places, a Good Housekeeping cookbook. And, you know, just a dry red wine and brandy and fruit juices and a little sugar. And I've decided to adhere to the recipe because I used to think there wasn't enough brandy in it. And
I call it Bob's Killer Sangria. Okay.
And I ended up putting too many people down on the ground, you know.
Bob's Killer Sangria is very delightful, and will take you well into the first half of a Bearcats football game.
Why am I just hearing about this? All right, very good.
Bob, you're welcome to come in here. I'll contract you to come in here and make it.
Well, we've only been back in the area for about 1.5 years. You know, it was that long 9-hour drive from State College, Pennsylvania that limited our contact.
Well, I think we need to, once we can actually get together in person, do maybe a some sort of like a pregame event at Z Place for Wine. We could get a and then some sort of transportation down to the game afterwards, be it a football or a basketball game, and
I would love that. That'd be fun. I have beer in here too, so I have lots of
Couple of different choices we can have. And seltzer.
And she has a little bit to nosh on too. So she has, the chicken salad is to die for.
It's the best in the
It's
city.
the best in the city. Is so good.
But you know, Glühwein has warm winter spices in it, whereas sangria has the fruity spices. I think they both have a little bit of brandy supplement in them.
Bob, maybe we'll have to bring you in so that you can make it. We have like a little like concoction party of different things, and I'm just saying. His sangria is really good. I've had it numerous times.
Yeah, the loudest party we ever had was with one of his sangria recipes.
Yeah.
I've backed off on the brandy since then.
Perhaps. Just a little bit.
Are you allowed to have a day?
I hate to mention beer in this situation, but we have been fortunate to go to German Christmas markets, and along with the Glühwein, they also have warm Flush, which is beer with honey and spices that's warmed up.
Yeah, our son and daughter-in-law like to go to Philadelphia's Christmas market, which is a German Christmas market, but I've seen the Glühwein, but never a warm beer vendor. And my son-in-law would
It's
like
very tasty. Let me tell you, I could drink more than one glass easily.
How do you spell that? Do you have the spelling?
Well, we can find it, but I just had this brilliant idea. We ought to have a booth for the wine tasting alumni club at the next football game.
Maybe the Alumni Association could help us out.
Hey, Russell.
Hey, Russell, Lauren, can you do me a favor and look at what spaces might be available on the grid for next year? Because we might have a wine tasting booth.
I'm in.
Yep.
I'll go make my hat.
Well, aren't you an engineer? Can't you figure out how to concoct that thing yourself?
I would like to point out I still am an engineer.
I'm just teasing you, Bob.
Some university back in the east.
I have not recanted my UC degree in engineering. It's been tempered by 45 years of experience, but you know.
Hope the government's not listening in, so Sam.
Government.
Yeah.
It's been one of the funnest things, okay?
It's a very good conversation, everybody. It's been
Yeah, I
great.
was just about to ask, are there any other questions for Leslie before we go ahead and wrap this up?
His lectures were wonderful. I mean, seriously, they really were very good. And the little baby was so cute. So yeah, it was fun. And Bob
And I made those bags for her.
Oh, nice.
Yes, they're my little side business outside of my normal job.
Very nice.
You know, I can't wait till we can all get back together in person at a restaurant. But until then, this is an okay substitute.
Or the booth on the grid.
Yeah, it'll be fun to have you guys in the shop.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Lauren or Emily, what's the next event?
So next month on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, we are actually partnering with Napa Kitchen and Bar right there by Z Place for Wine in Montgomery to do another virtual tasting. Finalizing some details right now, but stay tuned for those full details and registration. That should be in the post-event email that'll be sent to you next week.
And Mary Jo, I don't know sort of what the breakdown is versus College of Medicine versus not College of Medicine, but was that event went out to everybody, or was that just certain classes that went out to our wine event, or?
It went to all local medical alumni, except for the 0s and 5s, because I snuck them out of there.
Except me.
Except you.
Because you're making me work at it, I think, right?
I am.
She's just the meanest, isn't she, Chris?
No, Dolores, I need a burger. Can you help me there?
I got you, Chris. I'm ready and waiting.
I think Mary Jo and Chris, I mean, if you guys have something, we would love to share it with our group. You know, I think this has been an amazing collaboration, especially for Heart Health Month. You know, we all need to be reminded of these things, but I think it's great. You know, Chris and I are both on the Alumni Leadership Council, and we talk about collaborating with groups and the other network groups across the country and how can we do something like this. So I think this has been really successful in what things we can do to help each other and bring our Bearcat family into something, you know, a little bit different, unique, that allows us, you know, all remember why we were Bearcats, why we are always going to be Bearcats, and what we can do together when we come from different places. Like I was a College of Business major, I was an accounting major. You know, there's people from all different walks of life, but you know, literally I was like, I had a light bulb that went off and I was like, oh my God, Chris, we've been talking about doing an event. February's Heart Health Month.
Well,
there you go, College of Medicine. But I think it's great that it's work together.
Yeah, you know, it's really great with you guys and your knowledge, and you're out there with everybody and just getting a feel for things that you think could work. And this was really great. Thanks, Emily, for bringing this to the table, and Chris and Lauren.
Gail, you're going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to